Midsummer's Ride by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. 1 if by land, and 2 if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. Then he said good night, and with muffled oar, silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide in her mornings lay the Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hole that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barracks door, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed to the tower of the Old North Church, by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread, to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch, on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade. By the trembling ladder steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down, a moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath in the churchyard lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear like a sentinel's tread the watchful night wind as it went creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper, all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour and the silent dread of the belfry chamber and the dead. For suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. And that's all I know. Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom should I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom should I be afraid? When evildoers came against me to devour my flesh, my foes and my enemies stumbled and fell. Though an army deploy against me, my heart is not afraid. Though war break out against me, still I am confident. I have asked one thing from the Lord. It is what I desire, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, gazing on the beauty of the Lord and seeking him in his temple. For he will conceal me in his shelter in the day of adversity. He will hide me under the cover of his tent. He will set me high on a rock. Then my head will be high above my enemies around me. I will offer sacrifices in his tent with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Lord, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me and answer me, God of my salvation. Even when my father and mother abandon me, the Lord cares for me. Because of my adversaries, show me your way, Lord, and lead me on a level path. I am certain... Okay, I forgot the rest.
Do you not
I
me
am
over?
certain that I will see the Lord's goodness in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be courageous and let your heart be strong. Wait for the Lord.
Two-pointer to not pointer.
Now I'm going to present on Vermont's early history. In 1770, the New York Supreme Court declared that all Vermont settlers had to either leave or pay New York for their land. A man named Ethan Allen led a grassroots fighting force to drive the New Yorkers out. New York declared Allen an outlaw and put a price on his head. Allen and his boys joined the Revolutionary War just 1 month after it started, and on May 11th, captured Fort Ticonderoga and Crown Point from the British. These were crucial points in the war and allowed the settlers to retake Lake Champlain. Then, a little while later, he led an attack on a British fort in Canada, and I forgot what the name is. And this time he wasn't so lucky. He was captured by the British and held prisoner of war until 1778. In 1787, Vermont became the first state to join the 13 colonies and the 14th state of the United States of America. Here's some other facts about Vermont. Vermont's bird is the hermit thrush, its tree is the sugar maple, Vermont's flower is the red clover, its largest city is Berlin, and its capital city is here's Burlington, sorry. Here's Burlington, and here's Montpelier. Vermont is mostly known for its skiing, maple syrup, and dairy products.
Oh, did you draw that?
Yeah.
Wow. From your own head?
No, this is about the third tracing of the time I drew it from my head.
The third time's the charm.
Well, first I drew it from my head, and it was really, really sloppy. Then I traced that, and I just traced the parts that were right, and I kind of copied the rest a little bit, until I finally got a pretty good drawing of it.
Looks nice.
Now I want to present to you on the Crusades for Jerusalem. The Crusades began in 1095 when Pope Urban sent knights on a mission on the First Crusade to recapture Jerusalem. He promised them that they would get rewards in heaven for driving back the Islamic invaders. He even promised that anyone who joined the army and helped fight for Jerusalem would have their sins forgiven. So knights from England, Spain, France, Italy, and other countries with Christian kings or queens headed down to Jerusalem, to Constantinople, their first stop on the way to Jerusalem. They sewed crosses on their shirts to show that they were fighting for the kingdom of God. On the way to Jerusalem, Muslim soldiers went ahead of them, poisoning wells and stripping trees and bushes of their fruit, so that many of the knights died along the way. When they finally reached Jerusalem, most of the knights wept for joy. But the walls were thick, and the only way to breach them at that time was to use a siege tower. And before they had gotten there, the Muslims had chopped down all the trees for miles and miles around. So they could not get enough lumber to build these siege towers. Finally, Italian merchants broke up their ships in the harbor and brought them down to the Crusaders. The Crusaders used this wood to build 2 enormous siege towers and covered the siege towers in animal skins soaked in water so that flaming arrows would not be able to penetrate the tower. Then they brought stones and one by one splashed them into the river so that they would be able to roll the siege towers across to the walls. The Crusaders poured into Jerusalem and took it over. It had taken 3 years for the First Crusade to recapture Jerusalem. But the Muslims wanted Jerusalem back, and under the great leader Saladin, they started planning to attack. When the Jerusalem king, King Guy, found out about this attack, he gathered all his knights together to ask them for advice. One of his oldest, most experienced knights said, "We should stay behind these walls and wait for the Islamic invaders to come to us, because here we have the advantage of food, water, and supplies. If we go out there on the field to meet them, we will practically cook in our armor, and we will run out of food and water quickly." But a younger, much less experienced knight said, "No, we shouldn't stay behind these walls like cowards. We should go out there and meet those Islamic invaders and show them what we're made of." Since King Guy was a very stupid king, and he didn't like being called a coward, he decided to take the younger knight's advice. They marched out on the field, and as a consequence were utterly crushed by the Islamic invaders. There were many more attempts to recapture Jerusalem after that, but none succeeded. That is all